You were trained to be perfect, to speak eloquently, to behave appropriately, to post in line with the trends. Have you trimmed away your personality just for a few likes? The truth is, the world doesn't need another copy. They need someone who dares to be raw, dares to be flawed, dares to be real. Personal branding doesn't lie in a digital layer of makeup. It lies in the scar you've hidden, in the anger you've swallowed, in the fear that keeps you silent. This video is a wake-up call. If you don't tell your story, someone else will, in a way that makes you disappear. So, will you keep being invisible in the crowd, or are you ready to strip yourself bare and become unforgettable? It's time to take off the mask. If you don't dare to be yourself, then who will remember you? Part 1. The identity paradox in the digital age. The modern world is trapped in a profound paradox. Businesses strive to become more relatable, authentic, and emotional. Meanwhile, individuals increasingly behave like machines. They hide their true nuances, smooth out their edges, and present themselves as flawless application profiles. As a result, personal brands become hollow shells. What once was an advantage, uniqueness, has now become something to fear. Uniformity reigns, and that kills the ability to be remembered. Many people believe that the more perfect you are, the more recognition you gain. But the truth is, people don't love what's emotionless and overly polished. People love the feeling of seeing themselves in someone else. When a person speaks truthfully, even misspeaks or stumbles, the audience starts to believe. Still, some argue that being overly honest can feel off-putting or out of control. Therefore, not everyone needs to reveal every side of themselves. The problem doesn't lie in concealment, but in the purpose behind it. Protecting yourself is not wrong. Choosing which version of yourself to present is a basic right. But if individuals constantly perform to gain acceptance, they lose the roots of their identity. Being overly safe is the quickest path to becoming invisible. A personal brand isn't born from consensus, but from the courage to say what no one else dares to. In a world full of noise, it's the one with substance who will be remembered, not the one with the prettiest image. Part 2. The charm of imperfection. What makes others love you is not your polished image, but the tiny, imperfect details. An awkward smile, a moment of hesitation, or an embarrassed confession. These are the moments that make you come alive. When a person dares to step out of the censored version of themselves, they invite others into their real world. That's where connection happens. No techniques, no strategies, just humanity. And only then does a brand have a soul. However, praising imperfection should not be mistaken for a lack of discipline. Not everyone is ready, or should, expose every weakness as a statement. Some natural expressions are merely uncontrolled clumsiness, even off-putting. When truth is exploited as a tool for attention, it loses its meaning. Authenticity does not lie in revealing flaws, but in the reason why you reveal them. Imperfection only holds power when accompanied by mindfulness and constructive intent. True imperfection is the acceptance of oneself, along with the effort to grow. When you share a weakness, what touches others is not the pain itself, but the unflinching gaze. It's your ability to speak of it calmly, without excuses. An inspiring person isn't someone perfect, but someone who doesn't let fear dictate how they live. A personal brand begins by fully accepting oneself, unedited. Part 3. Personal brand structure as a media character. A personal brand is not just a nice avatar, a catchy tagline, or an impressive title. It is an ecosystem of stories. Just like a well-developed character in film, a strong brand needs an origin story, core values, social relationships, and even enemies it stands against. This structure makes a personal brand recognizable, relatable, and truly deep. You don't need to be perfect, you just need a clear storyline. Some argue that applying character structure to real life feels forced and unnatural. They worry people might end up acting instead of being themselves. However, structure is not a prison. It's a map to understand yourself. When you know where you come from, where you're heading, and what you're fighting for, you not only live more clearly, but also communicate more effectively. The danger isn't in having structure, but in living without direction, core, or narrative. The difference doesn't lie in profession or achievements, but in storytelling style. When you have distinctive traits, your way of speaking, expressions, metaphors, you create recognition signals that help others remember you. A strong brand doesn't need to be big, it just needs to be clear. Just like in a crowd, the person dressed differently stands out first. This applies to communication, social media, and even memory. Every personal detail you choose to keep becomes an anchor point in someone else's memory. However, overly curating your image can lead to the tendency to optimize the person. When a personal brand is managed like a marketing product, authenticity erodes. People begin to calculate every expression, every sentence, and lose the spontaneity that is at the heart of personal charm. A true brand is not makeup, it's real skin. It's not perfect, but it breathes, it has warmth, and it lets others feel the real person inside. Part 4. Inner darkness. From shame to strength. Everyone has a part of themselves they don't want others to see. It could be shame, insecurity, an unflattering memory, or a rejected emotion. But here's the paradox. That's exactly where the most powerful personal energy resides. When you dare to look at your dark side and name it, it no longer controls you. Instead of hiding it, learn to collaborate with it. A personal brand isn't a perfect shell. It's the sum of everything you've been through, even the parts you once despised. Some people choose silence around their wounds. They worry that sharing negativity will make them seem weak, be misunderstood, or cast a gloomy image. This caution is not without merit. Exposing your darkness without guidance can become a draining monologue. Not every experience needs to be public, but if you hide everything, you also lose the chance for others to see themselves in your story. The issue is not whether you share, but why. Pairing two words, one representing fear, one symbolizing transformation, is a powerful way to redefine yourself. It's a language of ownership. When someone haunted by judgment dares to call themselves a guide of attention, they neither deny the darkness nor let it define their future. They rewrite the lead role in their story. The new name doesn't erase the wound, but gives it a rightful place as an essential part of their growth. However, when darkness is used as a gimmick to attract attention, audiences sense the inauthenticity. Personal stories should not be strategies to bait engagement. When pain is packaged as content, authenticity evaporates. Real connection happens only when you've genuinely moved past what you're sharing. No one is inspired by someone who hasn't lived through the lesson. Sharing has power only when it comes from healing, not from a desire to impress. Not everything true needs to be exposed, but what is spoken must be true enough. A strong brand doesn't come from how perfect you are, but from how you embrace the parts you once feared the most. Darkness isn't something to erase, it's precious material for creating a unique identity, one that can't be copied. When you're calm enough to face what once made you feel weak, you are no longer weak, and that makes you irreplaceable. In a world where everyone tries to shine, the one who steps out from the shadows is the one most clearly seen. Part 5. Storytelling through tragedy. Real emotional connection. Every personal brand becomes more profound when tied to a real story. And most of the stories that leave people speechless and unforgettable begin not with triumph, but with hardship. Not with glory, but with the fall. When someone speaks of fear, loss, or a moment they almost gave up, we don't see weakness, we see ourselves. The strongest emotional connections do not come from success, but from the courage to voice one's pain, without justification. However, not everyone is ready to tell their truth. Some fear that sharing their hardship may result in negative labeling, pity, or damage to their professional image. These concerns are not baseless. In a competitive environment, showing vulnerability can lead to being misunderstood or exploited. That's why storytelling through tragedy is not mandatory. It's a strategic choice. A story should only be told when the speaker has truly moved through it and has an internal anchor strong enough not to collapse while sharing. The structure of an inspiring story always includes a breaking point. That moment when the character must choose, give up or go on, run or confront. When you show others that breaking point and that you chose to rise, you no longer need to self-promote. The story does that for you. A genuine brand does not need to be grand. It needs to be trustworthy. And nothing builds trust more than sharing your journey from darkness to light with a calm tone, free of embellishment. But if a tragedy is told just to impress, the story loses its soul. Some mention their downfall merely as a teaser before boasting of their comeback. This style of storytelling leaves the audience feeling manipulated instead of understood. Tragedy should not be a setup for victory. It is the material that helps others see that you, too, were once unsure and afraid. When a story is told with the desire to connect, not to persuade, people don't just listen. They feel they belong. Part 6. Everyone is a multiverse. Redefining identity. Humans are not fixed versions of themselves. In every situation and relationship, we express a different part of who we are. And every person who meets us forms a unique impression. Instead of trying to control all those perceptions, learn to accept the multi-dimensional nature of your being. You don't need to compress yourself into a consistent mold to be liked. A personal brand doesn't require absolute uniformity. What it needs is consistency in core values, not appearance. However, many confuse multidimensionality with lack of clarity. They believe changing the way you present yourself is a sign of instability or unreliability. This invisible pressure pushes people to maintain a single version of themselves across all contexts, even when it no longer reflects who they really are. Living truthfully in each role, child, leader, creator, learner, doesn't strip away your identity. On the contrary, it makes you richer, more flexible, and more relatable. Personal growth is not about building an image. It's about expanding your inner space. You can be both strong and vulnerable, both rational and dreamy. No contradiction is wrong if you know where you are and why. Instead of fighting your many versions, learn to live in harmony with them. When you no longer have to pretend to be someone else, you gain the energy to focus on what matters most, living truthfully and leaving a genuine mark. Part 7. Brands don't sell, they serve. A personal brand is not measured by shares or conversion rates, but by the depth of memory it leaves in others. And that memory lasts only when you don't try to force it. When you share something useful, offer a sincere perspective, or help someone clarify what they're struggling to see, you are serving. Service doesn't require effortful performance. It comes from a genuine desire to offer real value. Those who don't try to sell anything are often the most trusted. And that's the foundation of lasting appeal. Some believe that, in a fiercely competitive world, giving without clear returns is wasteful. But the foundation of a long-term personal brand doesn't lie in immediate gains. It lies in the accumulated perception others have of you over time. If every time you show up, you try to push for action, people will gradually turn away. Not because they don't need you, but because they no longer feel safe. They want to believe you're helping them, not just using them to get something. There's also the view that if everyone gives, we become bland, lacking individuality. This is only true if giving lacks intention. Someone with real personality will always express it in how they serve. When you share from authentic life experience, with your unique voice, you don't fade. You become a source. And in a world flooded with information, people aren't looking for the best seller. They're looking for the one who understands them. The one who's willing to help before expecting anything in return. Part 8. A common enemy. Unlocking community. A personal brand is not built solely on who I am, but also on what I stand against. When you dare to challenge what is meaningless, fake, or misleading, whether in your industry, society, or the collective mindset, you become more recognizable. Others will see you as a voice for the frustration they haven't yet been able to express. A brand with a mission is a signal. A brand with a clear enemy is a flag. And there will always be people who gather around that flag. Some believe that taking a public stand leads to extremism, polarization, or unnecessary conflict. But silence in the face of wrongs and avoidance of clarity only make a brand blurrier. Often, the reason people don't know whether to follow you is that they don't know what you oppose. The goal is not to divide, but to evoke empathy from those who share your vision. The more specific the enemy, the easier it is to find allies. And a true community cannot be built on vagueness. Part 9. Style doesn't come from fashion, but from consistency. Style doesn't begin in your wardrobe. It starts with how you make others feel about you. It's your visual symbols, your familiar phrases, the intentional way you show up at every touch point. When a personal brand has its own recognition dictionary, including colors, language style, or expressions, it doesn't need to be introduced. it gets recognized. Consistency in even the smallest details is what makes you unmistakable. Style is a signal, and a strong signal keeps you in others' memories longer. Some believe that building a style is mere posturing, superficial and unnecessary. But style is not about showiness. It's an invisible commitment that you know who you want to become and are ready to take responsibility for that image. Spontaneity doesn't lead to identity, only intention does. When you don't define your own style, the world will define it for you, and usually, not accurately. Someone with a clear style is someone who has chosen to live deliberately. Part 10. Everything can begin with 2 words. When you can distill your identity into 2 words, you compel the world to listen further. Those 2 words don't tell the whole story, but they spark enough curiosity for people to ask, why? They're not slogans. They're the most compact signature of your life journey. When you discover the phrase that holds both your shadow and your light, it becomes the anchor for every share, every choice. From there, you're not just building a brand. You're crafting a language the world will remember you by. Are you building a personal brand or crafting a talking mask? Are you telling true stories or scripting emotions to manipulate trust? Do you live to be remembered or to be applauded? The world praises authenticity, yet rewards clever pretense. So what do you choose? Thorny truth or polished imagery? Touching the heart or cracking the algorithm? Some will say living truthfully is weakness. Others believe emotional control is deceit. No one is entirely right, but if you don't define who you are, social media will do it for you. Are you willing to accept that? Thank you for watching the whole video. Please like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos.